I am Feel It.
And I am Fix It. And we talk about life.
And stuff and things.
With the occasional rant.
Which you will have no problem doing.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good morning. Whichever it happens to be, I hope you're having a good one.
Absolutely. It's, well, at the moment, a beautiful, sunny, late morning day for us.
Yep.
Late morning
Yes.
in the day.
It
Can't
is
talk
very-
words.
Yes, words.
Yes. Humid, yucky.
It is that.
summer.
It is also that, but, you know.
Summer.
It's life. What do you do?
Past the little coughing thing. So, sorry.
Mostly.
We didn't have time to give it much longer. Have to move on with the day. So I said, nope, let's just do this. So,
Well, like I said, when our description of the channel is kind of a slice of life. And sometimes our life sounds a little rough. Just,
looks worse than it sounds sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay.
it
So,
sounds worse than it looks. But, it
words.
runs the gamut. What are you going to do?
I can do this. So, I picked today's. I had been kind of rolling around this word, and you'll hear it just like any other cliche thing, and it really does actually have meaning for psychology,
Okay.
and that is triggers.
Triggers.
Triggers. I know we talked a little bit about this one, and I said, it's been coming up a lot, and I don't have all the stats and facts and things in front of me. Anybody could Google whatever they want.
Okay.
But just in terms of the reality of what triggers are from a psychological standpoint,
Sure.
and what they can be.
Okay.
And what kind of brought it up was, in the last few weeks, as we've talked more about some of the experiences that we've recently been through, and you were listening to an online service, church service,
Mm-hmm.
and there were some sentences that you literally had to just stop and be like, the service was almost over, but you're like, having a moment here. It's really hard to hear certain phrases and words without...
Yes. They now have some associations that are less than ideal.
Yeah, so there's some context I want to provide as to why this has come up as the topic. Not only just because it's, I think, good for general education, just in terms of like, this is real, this is what they are. It's okay to talk about them. It's okay to have them. And I think it's been long enough now, and without getting into more specifics on all of it, we were victims of spiritual abuse. And I know that's also a term that is not significantly recognized. It is growing in understanding for what it is. It's not just sexual abuse, as what has been more recognized than anything. It's abuse in general of power or manipulation, tactics with authority,
Mm-hmm.
that it's just things are held over you, or
and specifically for spiritual abuse, for people's better understanding, it's individuals utilizing your faith, your deep-seated spiritual beliefs, and then taking them and using them against you, sometimes through changing context or manipulating the context as it relates to you in a way to, exercise control.
Well, thank you for hopping to that.
Well,
you said it very well. I would have gotten there, but thank you for hopping to that.
We're going to go. I have no doubt you're going to go deeper, but it just put that right out there. It's like that's kind of the
spiritual
specifically
the word spiritual in
yes,
that definition.
Yes.
But well worded. Thank you. I would have gotten there, but well, it's not
just,
even the depth. I'm just trying to provide some context
Sure.
to some things that we have talked about.
Sure.
And then just go ahead and say, I think enough time has passed and we don't need to go into any specifics and open any doors in that way, but we were victims of it. We have moved on to another church. And there is a healing process to all of that, but that, so much more could be said.
Yes.
And
also,
the idea is,
well, and also for context, that wasn't there were other issues. There were other, not even necessarily issues. There were just, our life situation has changed dramatically over the years, and our situation has changed, and there's been, the pull to go from where we were to where we're going. And that was definitely that. It wasn't even like the last nail in the coffin. It was like 30 nails.
we tried to go and then it came back to get us.
And it was like
it's
30 nails in the coffin.
Yeah,
It's
whoa. So we made the right call.
We did.
But, wow, did that get crazy before we were actually done. That being said, that these things do happen, and this is not a call to say that anybody should be against church or organized religion. That is not where we are, and we have just gone through this awful thing.
Well, no.
However, there's healing. There's a healing process as individual for you and me and us together, us as a family.
Well, and I think part of the reason it's so hurtful and insidious is you take the education, spiritual education out of church, and look at it as one of its primary functions was support, community, and comfort.
Yes.
And then and that gets twisted, and instead you're now being used and victimized and degraded. It's like that thing that's supposed to be lifting you up is chewing away at you, and it starts so small and then just eats away at your foundation. Then you're just standing there like, I'm tired and angry and alone in a place where I'm supposed to be calmer, peaceful, and safe.
And then once you're removed far enough from it, you realize some of the things that caused some of that unease. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that really wasn't. So much more could be said there.
Yes.
So,
I'm one of those. Just it's like I am very happily. I enjoy being intellectually challenged on things that I believe, and I don't have a problem with that. Even when it's sometimes like, okay, I got to chew on that. I got to figure that out because what you're doing, what you're talking about, and what I think about don't jive. Is that a perspective, or am I philosophically wrong, or am I going to have to sit down and argue with you?
This guy really liked his arguments.
If he ever let you speak, anyway. Sorry,
and this is, I know, right? We gotta come back over. So, but to finish your point and validate it, yes, with a pastor specifically, preacher, whomever, elder, deacon, whomever it is in your church that you're supposed to be able to go to. There needs to be a level of vulnerability for that to be a genuine relationship. Yes. And when you're in the midst of some of that abuse, that manipulation, the tactics, you don't recognize what's happening. No. I always felt something was off, but there was a part of me that was just like, well, you're new and I've got all my things. And it really was the Spirit. It really was God kind of like, no, this is not supposed to be right.
Something's not right. But it was kind of insidious because it never starts off big.
Well, it never does.
It's always a little bit here and a little bit there. Jim Jones didn't start on day one by giving him the Kool-Aid.
And holy cow, right now there's some amazing documentaries out there. We watched on Hulu. So ironically,
it always starts off where you start off everything's wonderful.
And
this is perfect. This is everything I've been looking for. And then one small step. It's like it's 99.9% great, 0.1%. Yeah, okay. And you just accept it. And then you can accept that next 0.1 and then that next 0.1. And the next thing you know, it's like 0.1% right and 99.9% all jacked up. But you slowly got there, so you're the frog in the boiling water. It's
that's an amazing picture right there.
Yeah.
And you clearly needed to say some of that stuff out loud, so gave you the moment to do that.
Sure. I'm not trying to hijack. I do have a tendency to.
It's a sensitive topic.
It is, and it's trying to give. We've only hinted at the edges of this. I
think enough time has passed, and there's kind of this idea that we don't want to go into a lot of things. There's legal parameters.
There is,
and there's certainly we're not going to publicly speak certain details.
No.
However, we can say we were victims of this.
Yes.
We've gone through this, and in this context of today's topic was triggers. We were talking right after that.
Yes.
That had happened. We were driving, and we just had the service playing.
Yep.
And it became a conversation between us that you are very sensitive, and that I had a subsequent conversation with somebody that we had attended church with that is still going through much of their healing process.
Yes.
And I was able to refer them to somebody go talk to that therapist. This is very much their world and their specialty. So, triggers are very real in that they can incite all kinds of feelings and thoughts and emotions, and can become just as traumatic as the experience itself that caused the trigger to be something for you. Smell.
Yeah. Well,
specifically,
smells are.
I don't have the facts and details on it, but I know smell is very high up there on what it does for us mentally and physiologically.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact. I have studied some of this and getting into the physiological structures involved, but the sense of smell is the most closely connected to memory. Physiologically speaking,
you read a lot about it.
If I recall, the centers that process smell and the parts of the brain that store memories are in very close proximity. They're very closely interconnected, which makes sense. But at the same time, if you've got that smell that you have an abuser, or heck, a car accident, anything that with sufficient trauma, whatever, it's like something that affected you traumatically. Let me be more
in a
accurate,
very significant way.
But just before that moment happened, that there was, the smell of a certain flower, or a certain smell of a certain food, or I know people that the smell. It's like if somebody's roasting their tires out in the street, that smell automatically they lock up because they locked up their tires, skidded, and all I could smell was that hot burning tire rubber smell as they collided into the tree. And that smell automatically puts them back in that moment of emotionally dealing with that impact, that accident. I know other people, it's cordite, which that's not surprising. Spent gunpowder.
Sure.
There's that scent that just kind of
like a PTSD level.
Exactly. And that scent causes that memory to resurface instantly, unbidden.
And this is not, I'm no expert by any means. I've studied different things, worked with clients that have had their own versions of this. When we were discussing it, right, and we're pretty real, I am very sensitive. Verbiage specifically. Verbiage, smell would probably be my next one, and then sound. We joke. I am 45. And I'm so old. Some of my youngest memories are of, you know where I'm going.
Yes, I do know where you're going.
Chainsaws and motor oil and tractors.
Yeah, the smell of two-cycle.
Because we cut wood to
Yes.
heat our home
Yes.
growing up. And that's how I spent a significant amount of the summer.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is not an exaggeration. It, like, very young memories
Yes.
of this. Whether it was to be, like, to ride on the back of the trailer, or it was to be on somebody's lap on the tractor and then sit in the woods. But this was a significant part of my childhood.
Yes.
To this day, if I hear it, if I smell it, I get angry.
Yes, you do.
I can feel the tension. We chuckle about it, but it's one of those, like,
Yep.
okay.
You haven't fully processed.
I don't ever think I will. It was awful.
See,
it was all I didn't have a great relationship with my grandparents. They were not great people. And they were the ones typically with us because my parents worked during the day. But even after they were gone, and then it was my father, and well into our marriage,
Yes.
we're still assisting with wood hauling.
Oh, yeah.
So well into my adult years,
No.
can't stand the smell. The sound makes me twitchy, and I know what it is. I know what a tree cut smells like. I know what two-cycle smells like.
Yes.
And you can hear it every once in a while.
it
Even though we're in the
resonates, yes.
city, in the city, when you can hear it and you're like, oh, somebody's getting a tree taken down.
Yep.
Because you don't just wood heat here. I mean, you'll smell it, and we know people do.
Surprisingly,
But
there's a couple of people not too far from here that have their driveway full of
Wood.
split and cut lumber, because they're apparently their house is very inefficient, and it costs them a lot to heat it up, and they figured that was easier. Hey, more power to you. I'm good.
But that's a very strange memory and correlation for me.
Well, if you understand the history, it's not that strange. But at the same time, the part that I think is funny about that isn't your response. It's the fact that I have the exact opposite memory response attached to that smell.
You loved it.
I love doing that stuff. I will happily go out into the woods, fire up a chainsaw, and just go ape. Okay, it's like when we started doing the wood cutting parties, instead of spend the entire summer a couple hours every day cutting wood, dragging it out, cutting it up,
doing whatever,
dragging it out,
because people had
splitting it up,
kids and jobs and lives.
Yes, he started getting wood piles just from local loggers. He could get this stuff almost free, and me and
family. Friends and family.
Me, friends and family. The guys would grab chainsaws and we would go to town.
Our children.
We would do a year's worth of wood in a weekend.
Our children, well, and some of them weren't even born yet now, but within our circles, they were toddlers and they thought that was the funnest thing ever.
Oh, yeah.
To help.
Yeah. It's like they pick up one chunk of split wood at a time and walk it into the woodshed.
And
drop it off.
you vouch for me. I did not try to stop that for them.
No.
Because they thought it was fun.
Yes.
I did not want them to have the
on
correlation
the other hand, were
of
as far
agony
away from that stuff as you could possibly imagine.
But I was out there.
You were.
I was out there helping.
You were.
I was doing the things.
Yes, you were.
But to this day,
to this day,
we laugh.
We do kind of chuckle about it a little bit. I understand. I do. I understand because I'm. It's just my association with it is different than your association with it, even though it's the same thing. So it's like somebody's having fun, and you're just like, yeah. And when she says she gets angry, she's not like angry. It's not like
just twitchy. Like
she has emotional. She has emotional maturity and intelligence, and it's like, yes, that is what the memory is trying to trigger. However,
thank you, honey.
I'm mature enough to know that it's like I can. It's like, yeah, just because I want to feel that doesn't mean I have to feel that.
Thank you, sweetie. Thank you.
Therein lies my issue with the common usage of the word triggers.
And this is what we were going to talk a little bit about. Yes, it's kind of an overused thing, just like other terms out there now. However, and some of it too, when you hear people talk about it, it is the PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, or disorder-related connotation, which, yes, gunfire, you mentioned it already. That's the most common, right, among soldiers,
Yes.
people that have been on the front lines, people that had to deal with some pretty awful stuff, right?
Yes.
Again, not knowing facts and figures, smell very, very high up there. We all have our some things.
Yes.
You're now working through hearing certain verbiage that you would have probably never thought would be a trigger for you.
Sure.
That, and I'm not talking like coil back and be like,
No.
I need to isolate and I should probably just like have nothing to do with.
No.
That's not how you reacted.
No, not at all. No, but it was.
You
was
were
one of those-
recognizing.
it was like I mentally recoiled. It wasn't like wasn't that kind of trauma, I guess, but.
But we do need to acknowledge that.
Oh yeah,
it has
it's
affected
like,
us.
Okay, that's affected me. It's like okay, that's weird. And I think it was, again, it was an online sermon, and from the same church, at the same stage.
No. Oh wait, yes, I'm sorry.
And
yeah, I was crossing it up in my mind.
And
there were two instances that you had a thing.
And
sorry.
It was like okay, all right. It's like it's like he didn't mean it the way that my brain took it because of how the person that said it before said it.
Yes.
Like, okay. All right. Okay. Like, all right. I'm good. It was just one of those. Okay. A little bit of mental recoil. Like, okay, I'm good. It was that there was that moment of, okay, no, it's not the same. It's not the same.
And we can't allow the negative connotation to attach and then remain.
No.
It is about acknowledging, processing it, talking about it.
Sure.
I also have significant reaction to places. Places and even doing activities. Like just...
But there's so much room for activities.
That's how my mind is wired.
Sure.
When it is attached to certain verbiage or place or activity or just something that is meaningful to me, and that is hard to disconnect. And I don't think we're supposed to necessarily disconnect. It's about reframing how we view it.
Well, and
that's my particular viewpoint as a person.
Sure.
And even as a therapist, that it's kind of just what the client needs.
Yeah.
But for me as a person, it's more, for instance, and I've mentioned this, so there would be some context to it. When in my own home, my trainer comes in and we're done. I have my equipment in my basement and go through the whole session, and then he fires me in kind of a awful way without any real explanation. Told me I wasn't worth, as I've shared with you, kind of wasn't worth an explanation. And then I didn't want anything to do with that damn equipment. I didn't want anything to do with my own basement. And I would have to walk by it to go do my laundry. My daughter's bedrooms are down there. It's a finished basement, like a fully finished area with a bathroom and a living area. And I didn't want to look at it. I didn't want anything to do with it. Because of the thing, and even the activity, though I loved it and I knew it had benefit, I struggled with that. You walked through that with me, and when we had a few friends and some family that walked through that with me, that do know some things about, working out and nutrition.
And
I do. I have a few. They had their own opinions about helping me because it was basically like, I don't know how he ever did. What you've accomplished has been amazing, and we know no one that would touch this with a 100-foot pole. We don't want to either. We love you.
Liability-wise, they don't want to have anything to do with that.
We love you, but we don't know how you've been doing this, and we cannot help you continue. So just there was a lot there. And I shared that particular one because I've discussed that in episodes. So that, to me, that was traumatic. That was awful. And it was in my house. I had to literally figure out, how is I going to not hate walking into my basement? How is I going to walk back up to this rack that we own and continue to lift and go through these steps and and not hate every second. That was emotional. It was awful. There was all kinds of things attached to that. All kinds of things. And that's one instance, right? That was, I can share. It was pretty real, where it was just like, that was not easy to get through at all. That was an awful process. And it was in my house. You hear of individuals, and it's happened in my own family, where people will die in a home. My mother chose to go home to die in her home.
Yes. It
was very hard for me to be in that house then thereafter. I mean, I was with my mother taking care of her in her last days, and I was, there in her last breath, and we could only set the bed up in the dining area because that was the only place that they had to have all the equipment and the stuff at the end. And that was the most surreal, awful feeling ever, to have to continue to walk back into that house. And those are things you understand once you've gone through them. I know it's kind of hard in context of what we're talking about right now. Unless you've gone through something like that, you might think it just sounds extraordinary, and God forbid anybody does. But the sound of beeping, for instance, if you talk to our daughters, they only remember the beeping when they would go to see my father when he was in the nursing home in his last months. Mm-hmm. They only remember that because it was constant.
Yes. Everywhere you went, there was that
beeping.
Yeep.
And they'll talk to you about that. So now if they hear like succession beeping, they will talk about that. Like, that sounds like the nursing home. There are things that are attached in that way, that whether they're good or they're bad, the bad tends to be what we'll react to, right?
Yes.
Like, you might have a joyful memory and a joyful thought, and that's, it's just not quite as prevalent as the bad for most people.
Sure.
And some of that is just the lack of processing what they went through in the moment.
Therein lies, I think, people don't want to feel bad. But the only way to feel better about situations like that is to actually feel it entirely and deal with it. You it's really, it's an easy skill to get good at, of pushing things into the back burner. The thing is, every time you can do that, you can not, it's like, I'll deal with that later. But then something brings it back up, and it's still just as raw and just as hurtful as the first time it happened, because you've never actually dealt with it. If you don't deal with it at all, it never loses its sharp edges.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can't dull it by...
No.
I mean, that's where people will start turning to substances or activities because
often.
They don't know how to deal with.
And in all honesty, sometimes it's like, you might need to go lock yourself in a room and have a good cry. Okay, no judgment here.
No.
You might need that hot shower, that long soak, that walk in the woods, that freaking whatever. So we all experience. It's like we might be dealing with the same emotions, but the way we deal with them are going to be very different. I can tell you, I wore the tires off of bikes, burning off emotional energy in my youth. I've knocked down trees. I knocked down a barn, actually. They were going to knock it down anyway, and it was like, oh, can I do it? And I worked out some stuff. I worked out some stuff.
See, and then the place where I would work out stuff was the last place I wanted to even look at.
This is true.
I get, like, but it's how you work through
you've got to find your way of how do you actually experience what you don't want to. If you keep pushing it back, you never... I mean...
You have to acknowledge that it's okay.
Yeah. Well,
but really it starts with acknowledging that thing is affecting you.
Oh, yeah. Well,
sometimes that's difficult.
A lot of times you don't realize, people don't realize. And that's where, again, people use the term emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
And most of the people that are saying that talk about it don't have any. What they're acknowledging is they have awareness of their emotions, but not comprehension of their emotions or control.
Control is a bigger one.
That doesn't mean you don't feel. That just means you don't let the feelings spill out where they don't belong. You know, like you and me, it's like if you're going through something and you need a shoulder to cry on or somebody to yell at, you know, okay, let me know it's coming.
Well,
you know,
what you're talking about, those are acute moments. That's not
yes.
like
well, and
something is so embedded.
See, there's sometimes though, yeah, the acute moments. But I mean, if you again, you need to, if it keeps coming back. I mean, and it keeps coming back with the same intensity.
Yes, there's a subjectivity for the person. Yes,
yeah, and like it keeps coming back with
for you, this was a big thing.
Yes.
Maybe for me, it wouldn't be.
Sure, and even it's like, and it might be a big. We both could go through the same thing and have a similar response. It's going to be our reaction and how we deal with that are going to be very different because we're very different people. We're hardwired different, and the nature-nurture thing. It's like our natures are different, and our nurture was different.
We are different.
But to truly, if you keep pushing it off into the background, it keeps all of those sharp edges. And at some point, when it cuts its way back through to the surface, it cuts harder and does more damage. Because it just kind of comes out at the wrong time in the wrong way. Because you've never dealt with it. You never actually learned how to deal with it. Otherwise, you would have dealt with it. And,
yes.
And you need to find that... Well, this is where I think counseling has a great deal of benefit for individuals. Sometimes you need that person to help carry the load. A load shared is a load halved. It's like you need that other person that's a safe, truly safe place to lay that all out there, to lay that open wound bare and actually start dealing with that festering rot in the background. And you can't do that by backing it off into the corner and forgetting about it. And then, you have that smell or you hear that sound or that name.
Or name. Oh, names.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still have trouble.
Oh, yeah. Well,
There's certain names I, for a while, wouldn't even say.
Yeah. There were certain names I couldn't have other people. Other people couldn't say them.
Yeah, no, I couldn't hear it and I couldn't say it.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear it and I couldn't say it.
Yeah.
Still, my goodness, that's happening right now, actually.
Yeah.
But
sure, but that is my. Again, this is my educated but not licensed 2 cents. Just personal experience. I've read a lot. I've seen a lot. I've experienced a lot. I've been fascinated by psychology, sociology, and the sciences my entire life. I read books on psychology in grade school.
His tism made him capable of that.
Yeah, I was.
That's not an
my
exaggeration.
Tisms, my neurospiciness was
your tism
on my own. So I'm not completely uneducated, but the process isn't you deal with it once and it's over.
No,
it's
I wish
it's it's like a rock tumbler, I guess. You throw in a really hard, jagged, crusty, damaging rock, and you knock the first thing that the system does is knock the hard edges off, so they're not as damaging. It's still hard. It's still crusty. It's still got squared off stuff, and then
good analogy.
And then you deal with it, and then the next time it comes up, you deal with it again healthily and properly, and sometimes with a counselor or a psychologist or that partner that you can actually trust, that friend that you can actually unload with, that's going to be there for you, and then you polish off some more rough edges, and then some more rough edges, and then this process, depending on how jagged it is, how sharp it is, it could be years of dealing with this when it comes back up. But it's intentional. It's never going to heal itself. It's always going to be that jagged thing in the background until you actively go, okay, you know what, I'm going to experience this. At some point, that massively traumatic thing that can knock the wind out of your sails It's like I've had them. One of my personal ones is like when that trigger happened. It's like I couldn't breathe. It was just that ache was back like immediately, and every time it was like it just happened until I realized I wasn't dealing with it. I was just pushing it into a background. And you have to consciously choose. It's like, okay, I'm still feeling this. It's been years. It's been years. Why am I still, is it this bad? It's like, well, there's a good chance it's still that bad because you haven't started the process yet. It's work, it's effort, and it hurts, and it sucks really bad while you're dealing with it. And when it's all said and done, you might still have, that trigger will still bring it to the forefront, but it no longer has the ability to hurt you. At least that's the goal.
It's the goal. It's not even that you won't remember the hurt.
Oh, no, you will.
Or remember any of the feelings you had.
In all honesty, though, I think I'm not going to say all, but I would safely say most cases, trauma and the memory of trauma, in a way, is a gift.
Yes.
It's a sucky gift in the beginning, but if you deal with it, healthily deal with it, and learn from it, you become better. Maybe not necessarily, better is a subjective term, but you gain knowledge if you let it.
It takes time. That's not something you can force yourself into.
No, yes, it most definitely can take time. And different traumas and different people and different situations are always going to be very different. Everybody is going to react in their own individual way, and they're going to have to heal in their own individual way. There's some commonalities and averages, but those are just the middle group. They're not everybody. That's all the outliers. For what that's worth.
But you have been through things. You understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
That there is a
different, but
of course. And there's long term, there's short term, but then there's, as you were even saying, the memory, and I'll bring my mom back up since I already mentioned that. Not to be too graphic, and I'm sorry if this does bother somebody to talk about it, but the way she passed, it was graphic in and of itself, and there was some blood that had come out of her mouth, quite a bit, unfortunately.
Yeah, stomach cancer, awesome.
Well, she had pancreatic cancer that had ended up metastasizing everywhere,
including her stomach,
liver.
Yeah, which she thought
but it actually took over her blood as an organ. And we kind of forget that your blood is an organ.
Yes.
So she clotted to death, and that was horrific, absolutely horrific in the last moments of her life.
Yes. And
I could not get the image of the blood, literal blood on my hands, out of my mind for weeks. I could not hear certain sounds for weeks. It was strange. I couldn't sleep. It would wake me up. Just the images of it would come back to me. It was very I had never experienced anything like that. I'd been through many a hard thing to that point in my life, but that in particular that was new. That was my mom, and yes, I had never seen anything like that.
See, I think that's where.
I'm not a medical professional. No, that's not my daily life.
No,
I knew what was coming, and you can try to be prepared, but that doesn't mean that your mind is going to catch up with that. In the moment, I was good. It actually didn't hit me until later because she passed away almost 11 o'clock at night, but like middle of the night when she was taken away, and you're done talking with a hospice nurse and doing all the things, and it's 2-3 in the morning, and you try to go to sleep. I tried to go to sleep, and it was
Yes.
all I could see.
Yes.
And it was awful. And that's an understatement. So for anybody that has experienced anything remotely close to that, you understand what I'm saying. It's awful. It doesn't even matter. Like, it's a person. It's a human being. But that was my mom. That was my mom.
Yes. Well,
So very different perception on...
It is. Definitely.
And I'd had experiences, but sounds and smells, the sight of something... it's just it can be so life altering, for lack of a better term.
Yes. Well, there's see, my brain is just running through analogies right now that just
well, and you hear people talk about these things happening and where it really does affect their life.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that that's overstated.
No.
Maybe not managing it well, if it has consumed you and you can't function, which is what does end up happening to people. And trauma is complex. There's actually term complex trauma.
Yes.
It involves so many other things.
Yes. Most definitely. And they sometimes refer to problems in life as speed bumps.
Sure.
They force you to slow down. They're kind of jarring. And as an analogy that actually kind of works, but not. See, with a speed bump, if you slow down, there's no problem. It's like sometimes you can't avoid it. Sometimes there's a pothole in a shadow, and you don't know that it's a pothole, or it's full of water, and it looks like it's a quarter of an inch deep, and you hit it, and your car is, your suspension's messed up, you just dented your exhaust, your forehead bounced off the roof of your car, and your kid in the back that was sleeping is now trying to figure out why their pacifier's in their ear, and they're unhappy. It's like it.
Nice picture.
And you might be able to deal with all of the superficial stuff that's in that moment, but okay, there's actually on the underside where you can't see it, there's things that are all messed up, and you can act like it doesn't exist, and you can kind of just get used to pulling a little bit to the left on the car, and driving like that. But that's kind of along those lines. It's like you've now you're no longer going down that same straight path. You are now curving over this way. It has now effectively changed your life.
There's a neuroscience to trauma.
There is.
So, how it rewires your brain, how you think.
It's so bizarre to me sometimes that, I get we're all on our own journey, and it's like I'm not trying to make light or be dismissive or belittling to anybody's traumas, but sometimes I don't. There are things that I understand why people find them traumatic that I've been through, and I don't.
They're wired differently.
I am wired very differently. I am very well aware that I am wired very differently. And sometimes it's hard for me. I have to be actively compassionate because I have to remind myself, they're not me. To me, that's Tuesday.
Well, and I've had conversations with people about pain. And practitioners, even, where they'll say they don't know how to do this or that. And I say, well, I didn't wake up doing it. That took time and effort, and I didn't even understand what I was building toward. I just knew I was going to have to find ways to adapt. And not everyone has that drive. Not everyone has that ability. They don't have the support. Not everyone's wired to be able to do that. So I understand what you're saying, even in terms of, we call it medical trauma, where, and I didn't even know I fit the category until I had to study it, where it is the idea that you live with chronic issues and that anxiety always being in the back of your mind manifests in various ways.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that the pain is not real or the experience isn't real. I mean, my goodness, I have sure had enough episodes in front of enough medical professionals that I'm not imagining what is happening. No. I have things, but it changes how you think. It changes how you respond. It changes how you react. And just like you with your tisms, right? You don't quite get why something affects somebody differently because you only know how something affects you, and it's how you think and what you've been through it. Yes. Experience does shade some of that.
Oh, of course. Well, and again, I make a point of being actively compassionate to those because it's not my nature. That even it's like, okay, I don't get that, but you don't have to explain to me. All I need to know is you're hurting, you're going through something. What can I do to help? I don't have to understand. It's like I don't have that job. I don't have to understand. It's easier when I do, and there's a lot of times I can relate to certain things. The things that had long-lasting effects on me, I don't know if would have affected other people the same way. But the things that they're dealing with, yeah, I guarantee that I wouldn't think twice about that. I've had conversations like, yeah, that really messed you up. Like that didn't mess me up. It's like, well, you don't know until you've been there. I've been there. I've done exactly that in a different circumstance. I don't think twice about it. Never. It's like, yeah, well, it's like pops into my head. Yeah, well, that sucked. Okay, and I get on with my day. I don't have that emotional response to that episode. But
the way you react.
It's the way
what you've been through.
That's how I'm wired.
Yes. It's respecting that we are individuals.
So it's like, okay, you need somebody that can help you through that. I've been through that, but you're not going to be able to do what I did to get through it.
You do also have to be in a place of acknowledgement and receiving.
Sure. Oh, yeah. And not everybody is ready. But, the young gentleman that we chat with, he's... There's a lot of things that he needs to deal with. The problem is, where do you start sometimes? When everything in his life has been traumatic and triggering. It's like there's nowhere he can go. There's nothing he can do. There's nobody he can talk to that isn't related in some fashion to
that's a trauma expert.
Yeah, that's
on that level.
On that level,
that's a trauma expert.
Brother, wish I could. I can be here for you. I don't know what I can do for you beyond that.
There is a so we were talking about with triggers, right? That
yes.
sense that it's kind of overstated in some ways,
often
misunderstood, and
used. And used as an excuse to not
function, not be responsible, not be mature.
If anybody in a conversation lists off a bunch of things that you can't talk about because it triggers them, it's like those are people who are not triggered. They have no emotional maturity, and they lack the ability to control their own emotions and self-regulate. They're using what should be an act of compassion as a way to control you. Yeah, and
wow, that got deep.
Yeah, and if you want to go down that road, yeah, you're talking to the wrong fella.
That got deep.
It's like, yeah. Fix it. Don't play that game.
Fix it. Don't play that game.
Fix it. Don't play that.
That's kind of true. When we were talking about this as a topic,
yeah. Well, we didn't. You kind of dropped it on me.
Oh no, I brought this up. A few weeks ago when
we were talking.
There was several days there in a row that it just kind of came up, and it was more. Yeah. It was related to our experience with the spiritual abuse, and just recognizing it for what it is. What does it feel like moving forward? It was conversations that I was having with another individual, and I relayed to you, and then we were having our own, because we both found ourselves in some weird little
Yes.
vortex of like, I can't hear this and I can't hear that without feeling this and thinking about that. And you got to keep it in check, even with what you're saying about, like, you have to acknowledge it. You have to react appropriately. You have to know what is appropriate. Often people will numb. Mm-hmm. That's the easiest go-to.
It is.
Shut it down.
I operated in that realm for a very long time at one point in my life.
Yes. We have talked about that.
Yes, we have.
Yes.
It was way, how does that song go? I'd rather hurt than feel nothing at all. Yeah, no, sorry. Nope. No, feeling nothing is definitely way better.
I don't know how many years into our marriage. I don't even remember. I don't know. It's been a while. You had trouble with the song Angel by Aerosmith.
Yes.
I think you still do.
A little bit. Well, I mean,
it's not like we play it all the time.
No,
but
it's a lovely song, but it does have an emotional connection to somebody.
So I hear Amazing Grace. Mm-hmm. When I was humming Amazing Grace, as I was rubbing my mother's back, in the last few moments that she could actually sit up, mm-hmm. and
it was one of her favorite songs.
Yes, yeah. And I was rubbing her back, and that's a very vivid mm-hmm. memory for me as I was humming Amazing Grace. I still to this day, and she's been gone over 9 years, I'm having a reaction right now. Mm-hmm. I would never not hear that song.
No,
and remember that.
See, and that memory is.
She couldn't talk anymore.
You know,
she couldn't talk. I don't know how coherent she really was, but she kept trying to sit up, and we just helped her sit up, mm-hmm. and she, sat over the edge of the bed, and I just started rubbing her back, mm-hmm. and that was the last interaction that she was conscious enough mm-hmm. for. Because it was after that we laid her back down, and then she did not wake back up.
Yep.
So that is a special memory and a very strange, like.
See, and now.
I was at peace in that moment. Like,
yes.
I knew my mother was not going to be with us much longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now, there's. I think.
The song makes me feel
a lot
peace.
Of times, trigger is used specifically in trauma contexts, and that's far too narrow.
And that's the bad that I was talking about.
Yeah,
like, we look at the bad, not always the good or the bittersweet or
there's. Now, admittedly, that song is indelibly attached to those moments in your life. It's now.
I believe for as long as in my conscious days, for as long as I'm able to remember that, I will remember that.
Certainly, and that will always incite a certain emotional response, and I don't know at this point in your life if it's necessarily just the trauma of that situation. It's you can't not think of it without thinking of what happened.
It is a trigger in a memory and a feeling.
Exactly.
And I have that feeling when I hear the song.
Yes. And it's, there's certain things in our life, people, relationships especially, that are they have a piece of our heart, I guess, is
mm-hmm.
a way to say it. And when they're gone, that piece goes with them.
Yes.
And
that's the end of relationship. That's the end of life. That's
yes. And
in all those types of
you
things.
You heal,
mm-hmm.
and that whole changes. I mean,
it does.
It shrinks, it scars over, it heals, it stops bleeding actively. But that hole's never not gone. And I don't think it should be. It's the moments of loss. I mean, like with your mom, that the fact that it's that very specific moment is kind of a shame.
It's bittersweet.
It is. I mean,
Bittersweet.
because that song is also a part of. I mean, it was written on stuff all over the place in her house.
Yeah, she loved that song.
And it can also be used to, you can reassociate a little bit. You can't disconnect that memory because they're just attached, but you can reassociate some of those with better times. You can use it as a, it's like, just because I remember the pain doesn't mean I can't use that as a reminder of the good times too.
Absolutely.
I can kind of hear your mom laughing right now.
I know.
She had a great laugh.
And we were discussing, you want to talk about triggers and my mom. Let's just shove that back in there one more time. Just passing the 4th of July. And we were at my aunt's home, which is my mother's oldest sister. And she could not find her Miracle Whip. You got to understand. My mother had like a weird obsession with Miracle Whip. And
when we cleaned out the house,
yeah,
after getting ready to move your dad out, and we were just emptying stuff out, they had a pantry, and in that pantry, was it like 5-gallon jars?
It was something awful.
It was like 5-gallon jars of Miracle Whip.
Well expired.
And they were all expired. They were in there so long she forgot she had them.
It was disgusting and frightening.
But it was just like, we're just go through this, like, this is ridiculous. But the absolute absurdity of that was just...
No offense to Miracle Whip, if you ever want to be a sponsor. But you understand,
white people spicy.
White people spicy. Oh my gosh. So summertime is always like, you think about the big holidays. My mother loved her cooking. She loved her picnic food. Yeah. She loved her potato salad. Cannot make potato salad without thinking about my mom.
No.
I can't
go
to buy the Miracle Whip without, I mean, I can't eat it anymore, but my family does. And 4th of July, we're at the home. She can't find the Miracle Whip. It was funny. It was just, one of those things we could all laugh about. Yep. And then, we were discussing, while my aunt was cooking, all the things that my mother had cooked and how she did it. And
we can't duplicate it, man. We just can't duplicate it.
And then my aunt's done a really good job duplicating some things.
Oh,
yeah. Because they were raised to cook the same.
Yes.
But
your mom had her own.
Oh, yeah. Extra everything gross.
It was extra.
Yeah.
It was always...
Extra butter, extra Miracle Whip, extra mayonnaise, extra everything. But it's funny when you talk about it's triggers. It's not just like memories. It's like the smell of something. Miracle Whip. I know it's a pretty weird one.
Yes.
Another odd thing about me, right? So Memorial Day comes around and I just joke that Halloween's closer, right? Because it's just my thought process and kind of my joke and my things. My mother loved all the fall and winter holidays. Like, after Labor Day, it was all about Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, cooking, baking, all the things.
Always overdid so much.
When we were younger, my kids were younger, our kids were younger, it was decorating. She would even decorate still like Halloween and Christmas, of course. But when I was growing up, it was Halloween was far more decorating and far more big of a deal. But that was what I grew up with. That's what I knew. It's what I remembered. There are certain things about that, certain smells and like time of year. Like you can smell when fall is coming. That's not just a Michigan thing. You hear people say all the time, like you can smell when fall is coming. It's kind of real. There's certain
stuff changes. Yeah.
Triggers that you have that strange melancholy feeling. I will get that when it's season change like that, or like you see the leaves start to turn color, or even to see like different Halloween things on the shelves. I had a very hard time for a long time with holiday changes like that. My mother passed on in Easter. I know the day changes every year, but or I should say the date changes every year, but it was just strange. It was strange for me for a long time. And then when that first Halloween rolled around, I don't even know if it was Labor Day yet. It couldn't have been. It couldn't have been. I had walked into, I just know why, because of the time frame that I'm talking about, but I walked into a Menards and there were Halloween decorations and I completely lost it.
Yep.
I 100% lost it, bawling my eyes out in the middle of Menards. That was like the first time I would tell you I had like a full public meltdown trigger moment. And it was a very long time thereafter. I could not look at Halloween or Christmas decorations without having some interesting reactions.
Well,
but those were, I mean, there's so much wrapped up into that.
Oh yeah, it wasn't just
so much wrapped up.
That's years
now
of memories that are attached that just kind of their meaning switched. So you get that oh look, it's Christmas, and it's like my mom used to love Christmas, and your brain would fast forward through the highlight reel of all of those Christmases and all those decorations, and then it stops and you feel very acutely all of the loss.
Well, and we'd said for a while thereafter that our children lost their Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, and Santa Claus all in one shot. And they didn't entirely know it, but they knew it. They were young, so then just to be able to walk through that with them and their loss too. And now fast forward 9 years later, and I'm laughing on a 4th of July because my aunt can't find her Miracle Whip.
Yes.
But as soon as she opened that jar, it was like
really?
right
Oh,
there.
yeah,
It
no,
was
that-
it was right there, and it was strange and it was funny at the same time, and hence it brought on the conversation about food, because in the summer it was all about the food.
Oh yeah.
The picnicky food.
Oh yeah.
Was the thing.
Yes. Well, I think
And
part of that
we
was
can't get away from Miracle Whip. I tried.
No.
You wouldn't let me.
No.
Even though I can't eat it.
Some things just okay, look, you know what? I tried. I said we went at one point we replaced all of the Miracle Whip
with
like substances with hummus. And it's not the same, but it wasn't bad. It was pretty decent actually.
And guess who developed an allergy?
And then I developed a serious allergy to chickpeas.
Huh.
And it was like one day it was like my body just said, "Nope, there's
No
enough
more.
of that." And that day ticked me off. I had replaced so much stuff with hummus in my life.
You liked hummus.
Yeah. There's some really good hummuses out there. You know, like Go Sabra. Anyway.
So another maybe future sponsor.
Or not. I can't eat you, so, you know.
I know.
So,
well,
but the rest
know,
of the family
so good.
can.
So I share these things and I talk about these things, I guess, to make it more real and practical in this idea that there are triggers and they have different meanings and faces, and you could go through something very serious and traumatic, right? And it could also be bittersweet or turn into bittersweet where you can laugh. You know, I can't say I would ever laugh about the way my mother passed, but I can now smile and chuckle a little when I walk in to a store and it's like February, sometimes January, and they've already got Reese's Easter eggs out, right? Maybe another future sponsor.
Yeah.
And
Brock's Jelly Bird eggs. All day, every day.
You know, I had a hard time even buying candy for a while there. It's the phases and accepting when something is off and off too long. To bring this back around to the beginning, as we're ending today, you heard a couple of statements in a service that caused you to have a reaction.
Yes.
And then you talked out loud about it because your reaction was pretty clear and obvious in the moment. I knew something was wrong with you. And see, I heard it and I couldn't even recite to you what it was. But once you told me, I was like, oh, yeah, I could see why that would bother you. I mean, not that it... There are other facets of that experience that bother me in different ways.
And they're going to be... It's like two people can go through the exact same thing and different things are going to be the ones that hit them. Again, we're hardwired differently. We focus on different things. Our minds think about different things. So different aspects of the same situation are going to be what remind us of what happened.
There's understanding that reacting is appropriate.
Yes.
Reacting is appropriate. How long?
A healthy reaction.
To how intense? Well, right?
Yep.
How long? How intense? Maybe the specifics on the how, right?
Sure. And
all those things do matter, but it starts with being honest with yourself about what it is that is causing the tears, is causing the anger, is causing the kind of like even that like falling into yourself, which I've done that too, where I
ditto
kind of shut down.
I've been there.
It starts with some honesty about a situation.
Well, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit too, is most people aren't naturally self-reflective.
No. But you do know when something's off.
Well,
I experienced this, and now I can't even hear these words.
Well, people
I
are
might have a
very
problem.
aware of how they feel, but they don't always ask the follow-up question of why.
But sometimes that's enough.
It's a start.
And it can be.
It's a start.
It's enough to be the start.
Yes, and the idea is to get that little bit self-reflective.
It is.
And ask yourself why. I'm a very big proponent of the word, or of asking that question, less so from 2-year-olds. But for yourself, why? Why did I react like that? Why did I respond like that? Why did I feel like that? Or like it's a jelly bean. Why did that make me mad? And ask yourself why. What's that attached to? Why did I respond like that? What is it that is making this large reaction from something so insignificant? Because a word or a smell or a sound is insignificant. And if it creates a huge reaction, you need to ask yourself why. And then follow that path down the bumpy, gravelly road that it most likely is going to turn into.
You know, I didn't, and just to, again, offer that personal moment, right? I knew the why on my reaction about chainsaws and tractors and 2-cycle. Okay,
Sure.
I knew my why well into my adult years. Did I not really deal with that?
See, I'm not sure how you would, to be honest.
I would say, I don't even know if my father had passed. I think it was before he had passed that I did kind of deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you go through, in the process of, you know, let's just say if you're going to a college that's worth itself in any way, a university in any way for a master's, the graduate program in mental health, you do have to do a lot of self-reflection. And there does have to be a level of real honesty on that. And there's some universities that are better than others about an actual like interactive piece where you're interacting with other students. Mm-hmm. And then
you're practicing on each other.
Yeah. And then you've got your professors that will watch that, right? Mm-hmm. Even in an online forum, they'll pop in and watch you. And I attended 2 universities, and they both had their sets of how they provided that. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of reflection and a lot of things I could process and manage before my mother had passed. And at that point, I was halfway through the program, and I'd shared before I ended abruptly to take care of her, and then finished the 2 classes before my father passed, so that I could at least say, okay, I have the MA, and then I had to move forward differently to get the MS. So that's where Fix It talks about the two degrees, because I did have to achieve one, waited a few years, went back, achieved the other, and met all the requirements and all the stuff.
That's not a criticism. It was just.
But I know.
Okay.
But I don't want to be misleading to people. Yeah. You don't have to get 2 masters to become a licensed professional counselor in the state of Michigan. That is not the requirement. That just happened to be the road I ended up taking because of bureaucratic stuff. But anyway,
when they changed the route,
you know, I dealt with it, and praise God, I am licensed now.
Yes,
limited licensed now until I meet my 3,000 hours. But anyway,
which will be Tuesday.
No. That'd be nice. No. Couple more years on that. In no less than 2. In no less than 2, according to the rules there.
You can get it done by Christmas.
That'd be amazing. But anyway, you do have to do a decent level of self-reflection.
Yes.
And if you're being real and you're being honest about it,
well,
then you are going to figure those things out. And I did figure those things out. And we could laugh a little bit more about it. In fact, we had some storms come through here. And just a few weeks ago, our youngest was in the car with me. And we were going by a pretty big tree that was in somebody's front yard. Whole crew out there cleaning it up. And it was a giant tree, actually. And we were both thinking it at the exact same moment. She said it out loud. She said, I know that you're thinking it. Like how big that tree is, how much wood they could get out of that for the whole winter. You know, like how many more they'd need like that to heat their house. Like, you know, it's just a joke because that's how it's programmed to look at trees.
Yes.
That's no joke. And then, you know, they were running the chainsaw. One of the gentlemen was running the chainsaw and we could see that. And my children know, okay? This was no secret. My children know about that particular thing with me.
No, they're well aware. Yeah.
So, just saying, there is quite a bit of it I've had to reflect on in the struggles and troubles I had. Hence, you know, when you're talking about it in this forum, to be able to share those things because you can't necessarily just do that openly as a counselor in the middle of session. But I can talk about being a human being in this format. So, wanted to kind of wrap that around there. But
sure,
I have dealt with that particular thing and most things, even the recent things I had talked with them, shared with you today about. I dealt with them.
Yes.
I've dealt with them as best as I can. It's nowhere near the gaping wound that it was to basically think you wasted so much and money and time and basically paying somebody to just tell you what you needed to hear, not what was real. And all the things that I'm not going to get into at the moment, but some stuff I had to process.
Yes.
And some things I had to go through.
Yeah, and
my gain was not the kind of glory he wanted, evidently.
Well, and fair enough.
But that's just all I'm going to say about that in the moment. As we
thing
end.
is for people to the idea of dealing with the issues. The first one is hardest. None of them are fun. It's starting the journey, and once you do start the journey of actually dealing with your issues, you'll be very glad that you did. There is no thing that used to really set me off that I am not very thankful that I dealt with.
Of course.
And some things, they're persistent issues that I have to remain vigilant with, but it's worth the effort. It's worth the trouble. And once again, I guarantee there are licensed professionals in your area that are more than happy to help you walk down the path.
Absolutely.
That you don't want to walk alone.
Absolutely.
So find somebody.
Absolutely.
If you don't know, send us an email. Tell us where you're at.
And do our best to provide you some resources.
We'll find you some resources. Just saying.
So, I know we could go talk so much longer.
Oh, yeah. But this is one of those topics
just
we
a flavor.
definitely...
Just getting it out there.
We could definitely run all over.
Some current situations we're dealing with. So
some current, some past, some long term.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me choose too. By the
way.
Oh,
not a problem. Not a problem.
Okay.
Didn't tried not to hijack it too much.
Stop.
I am a chatterbox.
I can't be. Okay, you ready?
Yes. Okay. I'm Fix It.
I'm Feel It.
We hope you join us in the future.
Until next week.
You have a great one.